just to give two lines of a brief introduction about Sarah. First, I would like to thank everyone who has participated today. And thank you very much, Sarah, for being with us. My name is Mona, and I'm from Kuwait. And I'll just share a few thoughts about Sarah, and then I'll give my brief introduction. Sarah Eagger is actually a consultant psychiatrist working privately in London. She's a certified mindful self-compassion teacher. She was a consultant at NHS and a senior clinical lecturer at Imperial College for 20 years. Sarah is also a chair of the Janki Foundation, and she's based in UK, and the foundation is also a UK-based charity that promotes spirituality and healthcare. So a very deep depth in Sarah's profile and CV. I just want to share my experience with Sarah, maybe having one time a deep conversation, and what touched me is her depth in psychology, as well as spirituality. So the beauty is that when she's sharing, it's really coming from that depth of experience and not just the theory of psychology. So thank you, Sarah, for these words that you shared with me. They were really very wise, very beneficial, and looking forward to hear about your speciality and compassion for ourselves, especially in these times. So thanks a lot for your time. I know how busy you are, but it's lovely to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and Ramadan Mubarak. It's good that you could make it online today, because we weren't sure if with the timing around Ramadan whether it would work for you, but I can see a few hundred of you are here, so that's lovely. And we'll spend an hour together today, and I'm just going to give you a little introduction to self-compassion and the art and science of self-compassion. And I will share some of my slides on the screen as well from time to time, just to make it easier to explain to you really what I'm talking about. So I hope you can hear and see me okay. There's a little bit of construction going on in my street, so I'm sorry if there's a noise in the background, but I hope that doesn't interfere. So let's just start with a minute of reflection, just coming into the present moment. I'll just lead us on a little meditation to really get us all here together today. So I would invite you to sit comfortably in your chair. Just let your shoulders drop. And you can have your eyes closed or half open, and really just coming into this present moment. First, being aware of the sounds in the environment. And then coming a little bit closer still, just being aware of your body, and where am I holding on to any tension and letting that tension go. Just allowing my legs to relax, my arms to relax. And then focusing in on my breathing and just noticing how that gentle rhythm of breathing in and breathing out is always there, it's always present. And just as I breathe in, to breathe in peace. And breathe out any tension. And coming closer still, noticing any thoughts or feelings that are arising within me, but just letting them flow through like I'm watching a stream of water flowing past. I'm just observing. And then sinking even deeper into that sense of stillness, the quiet that lies beneath my thoughts and feelings. My own inner stillness, my own inner silence. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to go to sharing the screen, which I hope will work. And I believe you should still be able to see me above the screen. And what I'd like us to do today is to begin by just thinking about, for yourself, I'd like you to reflect for a minute, what does compassion mean to you? Not even compassion for yourself at this stage, but just compassion in generally. What does it mean to you? And just have a little think for a minute for your own thoughts and your own ideas. What does compassion mean to you? So I should imagine that when you were thinking about that, some of the ideas that might have come up for you is that it's a feeling. It's a feeling that you have when you notice someone else is suffering and that you want to help them out of their suffering. And this is literally the translation of compassion is from the Latin, it's to suffer with. And so really compassion arises in a situation where there is pain and suffering or sorrow. And of course, in the world around us today, we can see that everyone goes through periods of pain and suffering and sorrow. And so this is something we all have in common. And it's really been regarded as one of the greatest virtues, one of the greatest values, one of the greatest qualities in all the faiths around the world. And people recognize it, that to help someone when they're suffering, that sense of altruism, that, you're my brother and I want to help you. That's a real great impulse in the human nature that we all value and recognize. And these are some nice quotes from people we know. So this lovely quote from the Dalai Lama, the wish that all sentient beings may be free from suffering. And this is a psychologist from UK, the deep awareness that of the suffering of oneself and other beings, coupled with the wish and effort to alleviate it. And there's something very important in this, because it's about not just recognizing the suffering, but really doing something about it. So it's a very active feeling. And our own Daddy Janki, she says, compassion is not wanting sorrow to remain in another and having the strength in the self to remove that sorrow. So again, it's emphasizing this quality of energy, this wanting to lift people out of their suffering, whilst at the same time recognizing that suffering is inevitable, but our effort, our intention, our motivation is to try and relieve it. And another very nice quote from Burma: when the sunshine of loving kindness meets the tears of suffering, the rainbow of compassion arises. So beautiful image of that sense that really compassion arises in the context of suffering. And it's our natural nature of love. Compassion arises out of that. When love meets suffering, then compassion arises. And there are many different qualities that are embedded in this feeling of compassion, because to be compassionate, it has a lot of other skills hidden in it. And some of these skills might be first attending. So we need to notice. You need to notice that someone's in pain to even begin to respond. To have some understanding, what might be causing this suffering? What's the root of it? To empathize, so that sense that we have that ability to feel someone else's feelings. And we may not want to really go deeply into their pain and sorrow, but we have to at least touch it to know that they are going to need our help or our assistance. And then that other quality of helping. So now I've noticed, now I've understood, now I've empathized. What action am I going to take? What is appropriate for me to do in this position? And when you look at the words that are used to be similar to compassion, these lovely words like sympathy, brotherly love, tenderness, kind-heartedness, empathy, warm-hearted, benevolence, these kind of feelings really, these words invoke that feeling. So you begin to sense that compassion really is an energy. It's a quality that we have. And we can use it in our day-to-day life with others. But then the big question arises of, how do I use that quality with myself? And the other thing embedded in compassion are all kinds of qualities, such as being curious, being kind, appreciating, being authentic, being generous. So there are many, many hidden special qualities that are in compassion. So it's a beautiful capacity we have to cultivate. So now what I'd like to do is take you through a little exercise. And this exercise is one where I'm going to ask you to think about, when a friend of yours is suffering, how do you respond? And then we'll think about yourself. So I'd like you to again just sit comfortably in your chair. And for this visualization, I think it's probably best if you close your eyes. And what I'd like to do is for you just to sit comfortably, take a few deep breaths, close your eyes. And just think about a time when you had a close friend or a family member who was suffering in some way, that they felt inadequate, or that they had a misfortune or failed. And you're just sitting with them, and what I'd like you to observe or notice is, how did you respond? How do you typically respond to someone in this situation? So what was your language? What was your tone of voice? And did you do anything? Were there any bodily gestures that you made? How did you feel? So just make a mental note of these things to yourself. What was my language, my tone of voice, my physical posture or gestures? How was I feeling? Did I do anything in particular? So just notice that. How did you feel? Someone you love or a family member or friend is in front of you and they're suffering in some way. How did you respond? Good. Now I'd just like you to put that aside for a minute. Just make a mental note of what you observed or noticed. And now I'd like you to close your eyes again. But this time I'd like you to bring to mind a time when you were suffering in some way. So you may have had a misfortune or failed or felt inadequate. How did you respond to yourself? Again, you just do this mentally, noticing what's your tone of voice with yourself. What kind of words did you use? How does your body feel? What actions did you take? So you're suffering in some way, you've had a misfortune or failed or made a mistake. How do you respond to yourself? So you can now open your eyes and just make a comparison between those two responses. How were you with your friend or your family member? How were you with yourself? And at this point, normally when I'm in groups or we have more time, I get people to talk about this and discuss with someone else what they noticed and observed. And usually, and they've done research on this whole topic, they notice that about 80% of people say that they treat other people better than they treat themselves. They notice that. And I've also had some people burst into tears and running out of the room because they realize the way they treat themselves and talk to themselves is really very unkind. And about 18% of people say they treat themselves the same as other people. There are about 2% of people who say they're kinder to themselves than others. But it's a very common observation that really when it comes to my suffering, I'm not responding in the same kind of way. So I'm just going to show you a little cartoon. So when we have our friends, we say, oh, it's okay. You know, you think of the words that you use when you're talking to a friend and you're saying, oh, it's okay. You're not so bad, or, you know, don't worry about it, or, you know, you're really a very good person. You'll get over this. All the kinds of words and reassurances and things we give to other people. But then when it comes to us and something goes bad, what's the kind of language I have with myself? Oh, you're useless. How could you have done that again? You stupid idiot. You know, so we often have this kind of very, very negative language with ourselves. And so it's very useful to notice the difference in this exercise between how I respond to others, because we realize we have the capacity to respond to someone else. So we know how to be compassionate, but we just don't think of using that same skill or that same energy or that same tool on ourselves. And yet it's very important that we do. It's really the basis of our healing. It's the basis of our ability to give compassion to others. And in fact, the Dalai Lama says that it's really our capacity to give compassion to ourselves and be kind to ourselves that deepens our capacity to give compassion to others. So it's a very profound life learning to learn how to give kindness to myself, because there's many things in our lives, you know, a lot of how our parents spoke to us when we were younger, things that have happened to us, a lot to do with how we survive and things like that, which means that we tend to be more biased towards the negative. They say we're Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. And we sort of developed these traits and these ways of being in order to survive. But actually, they can be doing quite damaging things to our bodies, which I'm going to talk to you about more in a minute. So one of the main pioneers in self-compassion is someone called Kristen Neff. She and another psychologist from the States called Christopher Germer developed a whole training program on self-compassion, and she's done a lot of research as well. And so her definition of self-compassion, so if you think about it, what does self-compassion mean? Her definition is very simple. It's just that I'm going to respond to myself in the same way as I would to a good friend. So we know that kindness and love we can give to someone we love. So really, am I able to give that kindness and love to myself? So it sounds simple, but when it comes to practice, we've got some very deep habits that we're not so good at breaking. So that's why it's something we need to practice and be more aware of. And she says there are 3 components to self-compassion, and we use these a lot in any practices we're doing. So the first one really is what they call mindfulness, or I would call balanced awareness. It's just that self-awareness, that ability when we turn within, when we look at how we're thinking and feeling, to really notice, honestly, how am I feeling? And so many times we're good at just saying, oh, I'm fine, soldier on. And we're not even aware ourselves until sometime later, maybe we suddenly stop and, you know, realize that actually I was very hurt by that comment, or I'm feeling very sad, or whatever. So it's that line, you've got to feel it to heal it. So unless you know how you're feeling, unless you know that you have some suffering that you need to bring compassion to, you won't even be able to start. So this balanced awareness, this introversion, introspection, being able to go within and know yourself in an honest way, it's a very important skill. And meditation is part of that. Meditation is the thing that helps us to really become more expert on our own internal world. The next thing is this idea of self-kindness. So again, it's using that capacity and skill we have to be kind, but giving that energy to ourselves. And the last aspect is this idea of common humanity. So when we're suffering, when we're in pain or taking sorrow or feeling down or whatever, we often tend to isolate. We feel this is just happening to me. I'm the only one in the world it's happening to. No one else understands how I feel. Life is so mean and unfair to me. But actually, we all suffer. It's something we all have in common. And if you think about it, you know, you're sharing feelings with billions of people. And especially during this strange time of COVID and lockdown, we're all going through very similar things. Lots of people are saying, I'm feeling very tired, I'm quite anxious, I don't feel motivated, I should be cleaning out my cupboards, I should be learning a new language, but actually I don't feel like that. And that makes them feel a bit ashamed and no one talks about it. But then when you share it, you find out, yeah, lots of people are feeling like that. That this situation is bringing out lots of different responses in us. So this idea of common humanity, that we're really in the same boat together and it should connect us rather than separate us. And so just to have a deeper understanding of how self-compassion is affecting us both psychologically and with our brain chemistry. So I wanted to explain to you a little bit about how it works in the brain. So the first thing is really this idea of self-awareness or mindfulness is in comparison to what we often do and normally do is what we call over-identification. So we have a thought and we get very caught up in it. We start what we call ruminating. It goes round and round and round in our minds. And so that ability just to step back and think, hey, is this really true? Is it as bad as I think it is? What's the silver lining in this situation? So that ability to have that kind of equanimity, that balanced awareness, rather than getting very carried away with the whole story. The ability to remember that this is a common experience, common humanity versus isolation. And this practice of self-kindness rather than self-judgment. Because self-judgment, and this is different to discernment, and it's different to really discrimination or being able to know what's really good for me. This self-judgment is a harsh, critical voice, and it often comes from our early caregivers. It's that voice that puts us down, and this is having quite a profound effect on me and my physiology, which I'll explain. So what we want to do is really grow that capacity when something's going wrong in my life or I feel I'm not doing so well, to learn to have that kindness towards myself, because that will be much more healing. That's a better energy to actually help me move out of the situation than being hard on myself. Am I making sense so far? Is that okay? So how I wanted to explain this was really with this diagram from Paul Gilbert, who I said is a psychologist in UK who's done a lot of work on compassion. And this is oversimplified, but it does help us understand what's going on in the brain. I'm hearing a little bit of whistling from someone's mic. So can you all just check that you're muted? Because I'm getting some feedback from someone. Thanks. So on this diagram, what I'm showing is that we have these three main emotional regulation systems. And this one down the bottom, this red one, I'm going to try this one here, is the threat focus system. And we all know this, we've heard of it before: flight, fight, freeze. So this is the system that really helps keep us safe in terms of getting out of danger, but it also controls feelings of fear, anxiety, disgust, anger. So they're really things that we have to react quickly, or we stop and we try and protect ourselves by freezing, or we're running away. We're going to avoid that threat. And this uses adrenaline and other stress hormones. So we're aware of what that feels like when it's going on in the body. This blue system is very interesting because it's the system that we use to get things done, and it's called the dopamine system. And it's the one that's driven, and this keeps us quite busy and active, so it's great. It gets things done, but it's very addictive. And I think we've noticed this with action, haven't we? That when we are too busy, or we burn out, or we're overworked, or we can't stop thinking, it's this system that's driving us. And they've shown that with all the new technology, mobile phones, when we're checking our messages all the time, we're getting a little hit of dopamine, and that's what's becoming very addictive, that we can't stop checking our phones. And now in Silicon Valley in the States, they're even doing things called a dopamine fast. You have a social tech fast. It's allowing this dopamine system to calm down and not be driving us all the time. So it's very interesting, this system. We need it, but it's a bit overactive in our lives right now. And so now we're looking at this green system. This is the oxytocin, the endorphins, the feel-good hormones that are being triggered that really make us feel safe, soothed, content, calm. So really we need to be in this phase quiet a lot of the time, because this is allowing our nervous system just to relax and calm down. And the things that might help us do that, we know that meditation is very good, walking in nature, being creative. There are lots of things that allow this soothing system to be activated. And if you just think for a minute in your life today, maybe a bit different if you're in lockdown, but how much of your time is spent just feeling a bit anxious, a bit threatened, worried about things? How much of your time is being very busy, active, involved in doing? I have to finish this. My to-do list is driving me. And how much time do you really spend just being calm and relaxed and really feeling safe and soothed and comforted? And I would say, really, in society today, we tend to really do things tend to be a bit more like this, don't they? That we're feeling under threat as a society a lot of the time, and that's hugely relevant with this COVID infection, that we're often busy getting things done. And at the moment, when we can't get so many things done, a lot of people are struggling with that, aren't they? Because they're used to being active, and that's how they kind of distract themselves from themselves. And so just being stuck at home presents quite a challenge. And so this is a really good time to get into this space, this feeling safe, feeling content, really practicing meditation, going into my own inner world, knowing that that's really all that I can control at the end of the day. That's the only domain that I have some kind of control over. And so these self-compassion practices, meditation practices, are extremely helpful in these times. And just reminding you about really that harsh, critical inner voice. And what I was saying, that they've done experiments as well, some research, and shown that when you talk to yourself in that way, that is triggering the same kind of response as this fight response. So in that part of the brain which registers threat, when you talk to yourself like that, that lights up in the brain scans. So it's really good to know that you're triggering your own threat response by the way you speak to yourself. And that's an important thing to understand. And you notice that when other people speak to you like that, don't you? When someone else shouts at you or is a bit harsh or criticizes you or says something not nice, you can feel yourself getting tense and reacting. But you're also doing that to yourself when you talk to yourself in that way. And so what we're trying to do is really turn that into a care response. We want to be able to tap into our own capacity for self-love, for kindness, for compassion, and use that to help sustain and soothe and heal myself. Then the response, that threat response of flight, means that I want to run away. I feel isolated. I really don't want anything to do with anyone else. You know, leave me alone or go away. But really, it's the common humanity that's the antidote for that. So that feeling of really, we're all in this same boat together, and we all have bad times and good times. And if I can remember that, I won't feel so isolated. I will really try and connect with others, because it's connection with myself, connection with a higher spiritual energy, connection with the rest of humanity. All these feelings of connection are what's going to make me feel better and really trigger that caring response. This awareness, this spacious awareness, this meditative mindset of being able to go in and really connect with my own thoughts and feelings. That's the care response in this situation. And another aspect of self-compassion that I just wanted to highlight, because sometimes people think, well, self-compassion is a bit wishy-washy, you know, it means that you're just being too soft on yourself and you're being a bit self-indulgent, and, you know, how do you get things done? What about discipline? All that kind of thing. And so this idea of the yin and yang of self-compassion. So we might have been talking about the yin. So that's really that soothing, comforting, validating kind of self-compassion, where I really need to calm myself down, make myself feel safe, really stay in a stable, equanimitous frame of mind. That's important. But there are other times, and this is what we mean by the yang of self-compassion, where I need to protect myself, where I need to say no, where I need to set a boundary, where I need to motivate myself. I should do that exercise. It's good for my health. I should get up and do early morning meditation. It's good for my mind. So making myself motivated to do actions which are actually compassionate to me, because they're going to help me in soft, fluffy, comforting one. I hope that makes sense. And I think what's really important to understand about self-compassion and how it links very deeply with meditation is this idea that our true nature, spiritual beings, and we use our brain and then we use our body, and it's two-way traffic. So there's traffic coming from my body to my brain to my spiritual self, and there's my spiritual self, which is creating thoughts and feelings which then manifest in the brain and then come out through the body. And when we go right deeply to the center of our spiritual nature, and anyone who's meditated will have had a glimpse of this and understand this, when we get right to the center of ourselves, what do we find? We find love, and we find peace. We find stillness and silence. And we realize that's who I really am. And so when that energy of love comes filtering down into the world of sorrow, that's when compassion arises. So it's really a reflection of who I really am and my true nature. And it's a very fundamental thing that is important, because it's really reflecting my true values. And we say that you respond with compassion not to make things necessarily go away or get better. They may or they may not, but because it's the right thing to do. It's coming from my truth. And so you respond with compassion to others and also to yourself, because it's a reflection of my divine nature. And we also know that the nature of the divine is love and compassion. So we can tune into that as well. And that energy enables us to really manifest our own true nature of love and compassion. So it's a very deep spiritual practice as well as very practical. So I can see that we've just got a few minutes left, and I'd like to take you now through an exercise where I'm going to ask you to think about a time of suffering in your life right now. And we're going to practice a little exercise where you really first before you react in a bad way or an anxious way or an angry way, that you're going to just stop and take this, what we call a self-compassion break. And one of the aspects of the self-compassion break is what we call soothing touch. And so we think about when someone is suffering in front of us, what are the things that we do that let them know that we're feeling for them, let them know that we are having this kind response. So soothing touch is one of the most universal triggers. So how many of you, when you thought about the person in front of you who was suffering, did you give them a hug? Or did you hold their hand? Or did you just stroke them on the shoulder or something like that? I know we can't do that at the moment, but in general, that's a very common response, is to do something, and we call that soothing touch. And that is something we can actually do to ourselves, because soothing touch is really promoting those feel-good hormones, the endorphins, the oxytocin, just doing this is giving permission to yourself. So I'm going to take you through an exercise where you're going to practice that. The other thing that you may have noticed when you were comforting someone else was that your voice was very gentle and that you spoke in a soft way. So you're going to do that as well. And a smile, the expression on your face, the love through your eyes, that's also conveying compassion. And so this feeling that you're giving compassion is conveyed through soothing touch, through gentle vocalization, and through your face and your smile. So I'd like to take you through this practice now, where we're for me, what soothing touch is going to work for me. And often it's this is a very common one and quite a powerful one, putting your hand on your heart. So, and then we're going to go into a practice where you just are going to think of a situation where you're feeling a bit stressed or anxious, and we're going to give ourselves compassion. Okay. So I just invite you now to sit comfortably in your chair. Again, it's probably easier for this exercise if you close your eyes or have them half open. I'd like you just to start with holding your own hand. And what I want you to do is really think about which kind of soothing touch works best for you. What do you feel calms you down, makes you feel comforted? And you may realize you already have a habit like this. I realized that I often did that with my thumbs when I was feeling a bit anxious. And it's a habit I've had for years, but I didn't really realize that that's what I was doing. I was comforting myself. So holding your own hand, rubbing your hands, putting one hand on your heart, and then another hand on your heart. And as you're doing this, just really a feeling that you're giving loving energy to yourself. Kind energy to your heart. And then maybe giving yourself a little it might be a health problem or a relationship problem, a work problem, or even a friend who's struggling. Just choose a mild to moderate problem, a 5 or 6 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10, where you feel a little bit of tension in your body when you think of this situation. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. We're just really practicing bringing kindness and compassion to my experience, to myself. And allow yourself to feel and see and hear your way into the problem so that you notice that it makes you feel a little bit tense or anxious. And then say to yourself, slowly and kindly, this is a moment of suffering. And you may have your own language for this. It might just be, I feel tense, I feel stressed, this hurts. Just being aware of how you're feeling, really acknowledging it and naming it. And that's the self-awareness, that's mindfulness. And now, just acknowledging that suffering is part of life, saying to myself, I'm not alone. Others suffer just like me. We all struggle in our lives. This is how it feels when a person struggles in this way. This is our common humanity. And now putting your hands on your heart or whatever place feels soothing for you and saying slowly and gently, may I be kind to myself. May I give myself what I need. May I accept myself. May I live in love. And as I'm tuning into that universal energy of love and compassion, drawing it into myself, knowing I have this capacity for kindness, that my true nature is love. And the energy of the divine is there to also support me and give me love. May I be a good friend to myself. Whatever is coming at me from outside, I can do this. May I be kind to myself. Sometimes if I'm struggling to find even words to comfort myself, if I imagine a good friend was going through the same situation, what would I say to them? What words of kindness would I share? Perhaps giving them to myself. So you can see that through using these universal triggers of compassion, such as soothing touch and soothing words, and then the energy from meditation, that you have this capacity to give kindness to yourself. And so this little self-compassion break, it's a very useful one to use. I've found that if I'm starting to get into an argument with my husband, I start remembering this, and instead of thinking he's being really not nice to me, I think this is a moment of suffering. You know, I just missed the bus by 1 second, or I didn't get my parking space, or little things that happen during the day that you can often just tip you out of your own stability and equilibrium. Instead of getting caught up into what it is, just saying this is a moment of suffering. We all suffer. May I be kind to myself. So I really encourage you to practice this simple technique as part of your meditation journey. So we are now at the end of our hour, and I hope you found that little introduction to self-compassion helpful. It's really only an introduction. There are many, many more practices and courses and online things that you can do to continue a self-compassion journey, and I can send a resource sheet to the Centre in Kuwait, and they can email it to you if you'd like that. There are websites that are available, and I can just show you that. Oh yes, one last thing to tell you about. We've at the Janki Foundation developed an app called Happy Dote, which has got little 3-minute meditations as a response to stressful situations. It's a free app. So again, if you'd like some spiritual first aid, then this is a great little app to have that will help you just have meditations while you're on the go, because it's on your phone. So please look up Happy Dote and by all means use it. And then these are some resources from the self-compassion people that you can also access if you want to. I noticed someone's raised their hand and there are kind of comments in chat, but I'm not experienced enough to be able to respond to all those, and I'm not sure if we have time, but should I hand back to the host now to wind us up? I don't know, Mona, if you want to say something now.
Sarah, thank you so much. I just want to say that we also have groups from Turkey and Greece, and there's translation happening also. So it's not just Kuwait and the Middle East, it's an international group that's listening. So, I mean, I don't know how much time you have. We have actually a few questions, but also to share the slides. Did you say that you can email them to us?
Yeah,
And
I
we
can email a PDF version, so they're not so big, with the main points on them. Yeah, I can do that. So I send them to Pavitra?
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah. So for those who have written, they want the PDF, maybe you want to put your information, whether it's email or phone number, so you can also be on our database, so we can send you what next is there. There is some questions, Sarah. Do you have 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Or
I can. I can try and answer them, but I'm going to, if it's okay, I don't know what the questions are, but I'm not going to get into people's personal mental health problems, just to answer general questions on self-compassion, okay?
Right. But some also were asking whether they can have, do you give private sessions? Some people are asking, or not at this time?
No. Sorry. I just work in a clinic in London, half a day a week, and see people face to face. But no, I'm not licensed to take people on in any other way.
Right. So one of the questions was, what is the difference between empathy and compassion?
That's a very good question, actually. Empathy is that ability to just have a sense of what someone else is going through. But it's what happens is then if they're in a very sad and negative space, you're picking up on their energy, and it can be quite exhausting. And again, they've done research on this where people who are just empathizing all the time actually get burnt out because they're really just tuning into the other person's pain. And again, when they teach self-compassion, and I think even one of the Buddhist teachers said, it may have been the Dalai Lama, that how much pain and suffering should you really connect with? And they say really just you need empathy to really know what someone else is feeling, but you just touch on it very lightly, because if you continue to kind of vibrate with their level of pain and suffering, it's not going to give you the energy to pull them out of it. So empathy is that ability to be able to resonate with someone and see where they're at. But if you stay in that energy all the time, it's not going to be helpful for you or for them. So it's a skill. Whereas compassion, when they've again done research, compassion is a positive energy which is energizing, because you're empathizing a bit because you want to know how they're feeling, but then the energy of compassion kicks in, which is really doing something about it. And that can be natural physical action. It could just be, and this is really very important, it's often just being able to be present and stay with someone else's pain but you're not going down to that level. You're really being peaceful, you're being loving, and in a way, you're lifting their energy up to your energy. So this loving, connected presence is almost the essence of what the main intention of self-compassion practices are, is that you stay loving, connected, and present to yourself. That enables you to stay loving, connected, and present to others. It's a very good question. Lots of people ask that question. Okay.
Yes, there is another question that when this my emotions are so strong that they cause physical pain or fatigue in the body. So how can we stop this?
Well, again, I think this in a way is the whole work of mental health professionals. There are many different tools and strategies, because our thoughts and feelings have so much power, and we often feel that they're in control of us, not that we're in control of them. And so if you think about cognitive behavioral therapy, or all the different kinds of therapies that people are using, just talking to someone, there are ways of trying to really empower me so that I feel I'm more in control of my thoughts and feelings rather than the other way around. And meditation is a really valuable practice for helping me do this. But if it's very strong, I would strongly recommend that you need help from a mental health professional, because it's often it's not as easy to do as it is to talk about. It's a challenge that all of us have. And I think it's because spiritually we've lost a lot of energy. And so we're not able to have that self-mastery, that feeling of, oh, this thought or feeling is not helpful, it's not constructive, I'm going to change it into something else. But there is a very good website that I would recommend. It's called the Centre for Clinical Interventions at the University of Western Australia. And they are really good self-help free modules based on CBT, on anxiety, depression, perfectionism, health anxiety, many different topics that you can work through on these self-help modules. You, even if you Google "what me worry," it will come up, this Centre for Clinical Interventions of Western Australia, and go to self-help resources, and there's some excellent modules there, so I'd really highly recommend them.
Sure, Sarah, thank you so much. That was so lovely. I mean, as you said, we had glimpses of that compassion, but definitely we need this compassion at these times as well for the self. So I think we will stop here, because the others are a bit personal questions, which I think they will get the answers through the slides or through the websites that you have shared.
I'll send you the resource sheet and the PDF of the slides, and you can
also
see
can I say something, please? Because tomorrow we have meditation. So I will share a screen now. It will have all the information, Zoom ID and password for tomorrow. So those who want to join, please, you can take a photograph on your phone. So I will share the screen now for tomorrow's meditation.
And also, Pavitra, there was a question from some participants saying whether this is recorded. And yes, it is recorded.
Yes,
So
it is recorded, and they can have Harmony House Kuwait SoundCloud. They can get this recording.
Yeah, but they have to send their WhatsApp number or their emails, whatever is convenient for them, and we can send it to them.
Good. Oh, well, I didn't know it was being recorded. So
Actually, Mona, for the recording, they should just go to it, because we can't manage everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So recording, they can just go to Harmony House SoundCloud, and the numbers and emails we have, we will do our best to send information to them regarding the slides.
Yeah, please, Harmony House
Your
Kuwait.
last word, Sarah. Yeah.
So, Aruna, you invited me to come and do this talk. Are you pleased with the outcome?
Very much, Sarah. You're brilliant as usual, compassionate as usual, and lovely to have you over in the Middle East again. Thank you so much.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was lovely. Thank you. Even I was following. So normally I'm busy, but I was following it. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arnold, and thank you.
Ramadan Mubarak, all of you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.